hey, Mario 75 back again with another Playroom Reactions. Now, remember the angry video game nerd? He reviewed Superman 64 in his normal video, and he reviewed E.T. in his movie. If you take a look at any YouTube video that has something to do with the 10 worst video games of all time, probably these two will make the top 2. So Watch Mojo brings you the battle for the worst game ever. We're looking at Superman 64 on the N64 versus E.T. the Extraterrestrial on the Atari 2600. Which one is the biggest pile of shit, like the angry video game nerd says? Watch Mojo's about to find out, and we're gonna find out ourselves. Anyway, game on.
It might be memorable, but it's certainly not for the right reasons. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we'll find out who takes the most unwanted accolade of all time. E.T. for the Atari 2600 or Superman for the Nintendo 64.
This is it.
Bear in mind that a winner of these 5 categories will actually be the game that has done the things worse, and so actually losing in terms of score will be the best that these two monstrosities can actually hope for.
Cry. There's stories of kids honestly crying that when they got this game. That's how bad this game was.
Round 1, gameplay.
Do we really need to actually talk about this game?
With literal and metaphorical pitfalls, E.T. requires you to sluggishly scour a landscape that bears the vaguest resemblance to the popular movie in search for the pieces of an interplanetary phone.
Phone.
An interesting enough concept, perhaps, particularly for an industry that's still in its infancy, but every element is so poorly executed that any potential innovation is overridden by total inanity. You will get trapped in an inescapable abyss, and unavoidable antagonists will definitely collar you. These are just 2 instances where the awful design manufactures the difficulty, draining the energy of the long-necked alien and forcing you to go back to the start of this infuriating journey.
You know, our job really was to think up something no one had done yet. To do that, to try and think of what's new, what's compelling.
17 years after E.T. launched on the Atari 2600, Superman, or Superman 64 as it's commonly known, was released with DC fans expecting an exciting title, as 3D gaming began to take over the market. Developers Titus Software, perhaps under orders from Warner Brothers, instead decided to squander Kal-El's unrivaled abilities and create some of the most mundane challenges you will ever play. In the first minute of the game, you know something isn't right, as criminal mastermind Lex Luthor tasks you with flying through rings. Yeah, get used to those. This might be an easy undertaking in theory, and definitely for the Man of Steel, but the infamously unresponsive controls make guiding suits nearly impossible. The occasional freeze breath and heat vision power-ups give you the fleeting taste of what Superman is really capable of. But most of the time, you're limited to fistfights with a muddled selection of pixels that the game tries to pass off as henchmen. Both of these titles are utterly devoid of enjoyment and excitement, with any degree of difficulty only derived from the broken state in which they were launched. But as notoriously poor as E.T. undeniably is, it tried new gameplay elements that were unheard of for the time. This was the 80s after all. By the time that Superman 64 came around, just before the new millennium, we'd already experienced huge adventures like the Ocarina of Time, leaving the uninspired title no excuses for being so bad.
The point goes to Superman.
Round 2, level design. Good level design is meant to provide immersion and direction to the player, not the abundant frustration and disorientation E.T. produces at every repetitive screen. The color palette is dominated by too many shades of green, making each object indistinguishable from the next and disguising those dreaded pits. Don't expect any guidance from the world around you once you're trapped in a hole either. Luck is always favored over logic, and your progress in the game is left entirely to the E.T. gods. The exploration makes no sense, and you'll frequently be thrown around the map to yet another forgettable setting that is guaranteed to drive you loopy. It might be hard to see through the fog, but the game is actually supposed to be a VR incarnation of Metropolis. Yet, for an enormous city, it's remarkably uninhabited. Everything in this barren world plays just as badly as it looks. For example, the terribly basic ring sections are put together so sloppily that some individual rings are even hard for Krypton's finest to locate. Or problems arise when a little precision is required in those puzzle stages. You have to be in just the right spot to do something as simple as press a button. Yet, with the Man of Steel's oil tanker-like turning circle, even that becomes super arduous. If all else fails, you can just kind of ghost through one of the many unfinished walls or doors and you're basically good to go. Trial and error is the order of the day in both games, but this one ultimately comes down to whose design hampers you more in the quest to complete the story. Superman 64's Metropolis is almost too empty to hold you back, while the possibility of screwing you over at every opportunity is the very fabric of ET Atari, earning it yet another handful of New Mexico dirt to pour all over it.
Point goes to ET.
Round 3, Glitches. Graphical anomalies, game-breaking disasters, and freezing frame rates, the whole glitching gang has turned up in Metropolis to make an already terrible game completely worthless. Ironically, you'll probably only enjoy the game when it inevitably starts to fall apart, as Superman getting stuck in the ground or holding an invisible box provides unintended hilarity. There are too many bugs to list in this video, but you'll be thankful for one type in particular. Sequence-breaking glitches let you skip huge sections and curtail the usual 6.5-hour completion time. Thank the Lord for that.
Who needs a glitch gremlin on this one?
No on-screen character in E.T.'s first game tie-ins is immune to the problems that the overworld presents. Whether it's E.T. himself tumbling into a pit he's nowhere near, or pursuing FBI agents getting snagged on an invisible tree stump, if something's not meant to happen, it's definitely gonna happen. The mothership's presence is a common feature for those seeking to exploit the game, with certain well-timed actions causing E.T. to either hang on the side of the saucer or, crashing the game entirely. Unplayable is a word you will often hear in relation to both of these games, but many of E.T.'s shortcomings can reasonably be put to bad design, rather than all-out brokenness. You don't even need to try to find glitches in Superman 64. They surround you at every turn, making this an easy win for DC's leading hero.
Point goes to Superman.
Number 4, Legacy.
Let's just get this out there. Not the worst video game of all time. Not by a long shot. Is it obtuse? Yes. Yes, it is.
You probably never had the misfortune of playing this mess yourself, but you've no doubt heard about E.T. Atari as a prominent part of gaming folklore. Its role in the industry crash of 1983 is difficult to quantify, but it is undoubtedly an element of Atari's overambition that saw 35 million copies of the game returned or unsold.
It was probably the first time where the consumer had a mass revolt against the game. And they brought down Atari partially because of it.
Myths about all of those unwanted cartridges filling up a New Mexico landfill were exaggerated. The actual figure is still a sizable 728,000. Yet, it is these kinds of unusual tales that take the impact of, yes, actually one of the Atari 2600's best-selling titles, well beyond the gaming community.
Look at all the pop culture we'd be missing if I'd actually fixed that game.
Despite its obvious dearth in quality, Superman 64 actually sold reasonably well in the couple of months after release, and satisfied the only audience who would actually enjoy the game: kids.
If Lenny and Jenny Olsen have been kidnapped, who will save the day?
Eric Kahn, co-founder of Titus Software and open critic of the licensors meddling in the development, has said that being linked to a cultural icon exacerbates its terrible reputation. No doubt that's true, but Kahn cannot deny that it would still be a horrible experience even if it wasn't a DC licensed product.
Superman 64 is the worst game of all time.
Despite its strong sales at start, a planned PlayStation port was cancelled, costing the company dearly and destroying any respect that they previously held.
We're really doing this? Is this a Superman game? Flying through rings? Is that the best they could come up with?
Any list discussing the worst game ever inevitably includes this pair near the summit, and though they have both achieved a cult status that many good games would relish, and probably deserve, E.T. might not have single-handedly taken down a whole industry as some have claimed, but he was definitely an enormous factor in tipping it over the edge. Winner, E.T.
Final round.
Round 5, Development.
No one had ever done a game in less than 5 months, 5 or 6 months, and I had 5 weeks.
For 2 long years, Titus Software battled against Warner Brothers and DC's need to put their fingers in the pot, resulting in only 10% of Titus's original ideas being included in the game. Khan does concede that those initial concepts were too ambitious for the N64, but still places the blame solely at the feet of the licensors. Their interference resulted in the toning down of Superman's powers and the notorious kryptonite fog justification for a terrible view distance. A beta build of the game gave us a look at what could have been before politics took over. And while it's still by no means an exceptional game, it's more stable and less sticky and has, okay, better controls, I guess. With a complete disregard for quality and a total emphasis on making cash, Howard Scott Warsaw was charged with creating a tie-in to Steven Spielberg's hit film in only 5 weeks. The legendary director wanted a Pac-Man clone, but Warsaw plowed on with an ambitious adventure title built from the ground up. Given that ridiculously short production time, the final product is actually kind of decent, just nowhere near good enough to recoup the $22 million that Atari shelled out to secure the rights to the ET license. As the biggest video game company at the time, Atari were inexcusably reckless in believing that they could rely on the film's profile alone to be profitable, and had no one else to blame but themselves for the disaster that followed.
I got a call in my office one day from the CEO of Atari saying, we need ET video game delivered for September 1st, and it was July 25th.
Both development cycles are a shining example of how events can spiral out of control when a large corporation blindly forces their will upon hardworking developers. But this deciding round comes down to one factor: time. To create a full game in 5 weeks, regardless of quality, is a feat in its own right. But to come out with a fully broken mess after 2 years, a full 695 days more than ET, is a masterpiece of mismanagement. Winner, or loser in this case, Superman. It was close, but there we have it. Superman 64 really is the worst of the worst. Cheer up, Soups, but look on the bright side. If you were dueling ET, I'm sure there would be no doubting the results of that battle, am I right? So what do you think? Are we right in giving the gaming wooden spoon to Superman?
Curiosity, I tried it out just to see what it is, and guess what it is? Going through rings. Yeah, what'd you expect?
Have your say in the comment section, and as always, don't forget to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.
There you have it. Superman 64 is the #1 worst game of all time. Links will be in the description for this video. And this is Margaret75, and I will catch you on the flop side.